So you're here, which most likely means one thing. You're getting that itch to play Lineage 2 again, and you're hoping to find a good server to play on. If you're like me, you've probably sunk thousands of hours into various servers over the years, both private servers and retail servers, and now you're just hoping to find just one more good server to invest time into. Perhaps you're thinking back to the Dion theme music or those first moments on Talking Island, how great it was to level up in nostalgic places like Abandoned Camp and Kruma Tower. Or perhaps maybe it was a very intense castle siege that was down to the wire that you're thinking of. Whatever it is, there's so many draws that bring us to Lineage 2. But maybe, just maybe, you're also remembering the bad parts of Lineage 2. The RMT, the bots, the PvP scripters and PvP programs, the server wipes that countless private servers have had, the pay-to-win cash shops that retail had, and those stupid pay-to-win events. All of those things were terrible for Lineage 2. But what if I told you there was one private server out there that's claiming to have a solution to all of that? And it's called L2 Reborn. It is a low-rate interlude progression server. As you can see here, they claim to have no dual box, no pay-to-win, and no bots on their server. So just how well does L2 Reborn live up to the claims it makes? Well, we're going to find out. In this video, my goal is to take you through important aspects of a Lineage 2 server, such as server health and political and community landscape. We're going to be looking at bugs that it might have and what changes the GMs have made from retail. We're going to be looking at things Reborn does very well and things Reborn can be doing better. And then we're going to look at why I play and is this server ultimately for you. My goal in this video is for you to leave confident about whether or not you should be investing your precious time into Lineage 2 Reborn. It's not a server for everybody, but I think it's a pretty good server and I think you're going to want to watch this video. And then at the very end, guys, we have a very special surprise, so make sure you watch the full video and stay tuned at the end. So when you first create a character on Lineage 2 Reborn, you're going to see something a little unique. And this is a custom window that the Reborn team has developed. It first asks you to pick a language, in which case I pick English because I am an English-speaking player. And then it walks you through the rules of how you can't RMT, you can't bot, you can't dual box. Once you accept these rules, you move on to taking a test, and it says if you are caught botting, if you are caught doing RMT, if you are caught dual boxing, you will be permanently banned. Once you start the test, this is a simple math problem that can easily be solved by really anybody if you've graduated from first grade. Once you pass this math problem, you then move on to the anti-dual box test. And what this is you have to match the letter you see up top to the letter in the array. And if you don't answer fast enough or you click the wrong one, you'll see an error pop up and the amount of attempts you have left go down. You need 3, 4, sometimes 5 successful attempts before you ultimately pass. This is so that you can't be on multiple screens at the same time trying to click on all these at the same time. Before I move on, I also want to say it is more than just these tests. The GMs are also very active in manually checking characters and manually going to certain groups that are XPing and seeing who's always playing with who, and if there's always like 2 players on at the same time and they only party with each other, they're going to be checked manually. There's also commands that let other players report them for botting or for dual boxing, and the GMs go out and manually check it. So it's more than just these 2 little pop-ups that will happen. You're also going to be checked manually by the GMs. You could get reported by players. The GMs have essentially created a multi-point of failure system so that even if someone figures out a way to get past the math problems or to get past the CAPTCHAs, there's still other mechanics and systems in place to help catch people cheating. And the end result of this is generally, I haven't seen many people botting. I don't know if I've seen any bots on the server. Occasionally I'll see people that look like they're dual boxing, and certainly people do get banned for dual boxing. But the end result is a server that's pretty devoid of bots and dual boxers. It is incredibly hard and becoming increasingly harder to dual box on L2 Reborn. which means you can only play one character at a time, and that character is your character. It adds a very old school feel to the server. But maybe, if you're watching this video, that might not be for you. If you want to be running 9 characters all by yourself and having a full train, that's something to consider, because on this server you can't effectively dual box. You're going to get caught and you're going to get banned real quickly. Now, in regards to pay-to-win aspects of Lineage 2 Reborn, there isn't really any. As you see here on the community page, it shows a 50% bonus to XP and SP if you're a VIP, but you can become a VIP for free every day if you vote daily. There's also options to buy permanent VIP, and there's also options to buy your first and second class change, as well as cosmetic things like changing your sex and name, and getting a blue name or getting a green title, things like that. You can also buy cosmetic hats that don't give any stats, but they make you look cool. Maybe that's a little bonus. You could also buy things like cloaks. If you look at the newer Reborn shop, they have all the same things like class changes in here, and blue titles, green titles. You could also buy Agiathons that also look very cool, but once again do not give any stats. These are not any stat giving Agiathons like retail servers had and Korea had. These are just purely cosmetic. And while that might be great that the server has such things that stop bots and stop dual boxing, that's not worth a whole lot if nobody plays the server. So just how populated is L2 Reborn? Well, according to GMs, every day the server peaks at over 3,000 users online at once. This is 8 in town right now that I'm running through. But as you can see, these are offline shops, but it is still pretty populated and packed. And we're going to go to gear on real quick. But you're going to be noticing that the server is quite filled with players. As it loads here. This server takes a little bit to load, but wow, look at gear on. If this just doesn't bring back memories of old retail servers, I'm not sure what does. I mean, the GMs have set zones that you can't put shops down in, which make it easy to actually still move around gear in, but it is packed. Offline shops aside, and a healthy economy aside, it's still really important that there are low-level players and low-level shops for people starting new. So I moved to Dion here, and you'll see still tons of shops set up for low-level players. People are selling D-grade weapons, and they have SSD and BSSD for sale. In fact, I'm filming this right now at the start of kind of like a North American time zone. It's 8:30 here in Boston. If you look at the party matching tool that the GMs have implemented, you'll see even way past European playtimes, there's still people using Party Matcher to find parties, and surprisingly low levels here. There's somebody here doing AoE 20 to 30. I'm guessing that's probably abandoned camp. There's somebody here doing AoE and Heretic and Pilgrims for slightly higher levels. But seeing this off-peak hours, it just shows just how populated this server is. In fact, I've been talking to some people that are higher level that are in not so strong clans and alliances, and they've been saying one of the biggest issues they're actually running into is that there's too many players at peak times. They can't go to high-end places because there's just thousands and thousands of people online. I'm running out now to Heretics and Execution Grounds to see if there's anybody leveling there, but as you could see, there's just a ton of people here. Alright, I made it to Execution Grounds now. Remember, this is not peak hours, but you see someone sitting here as a mage. Looks like maybe a cleric of some kind. They're killing the undead, and I think up here is 1 or 2 other players. Totally not planned or anything. This is just me running through. Yep, here's another mage leveling up here. And these are low-level zones. Like, these are very low-level zones that you don't stay here for long. So if you see people here, it means they're, creating new characters and still leveling into low-level places. It shows that the server is quite healthy. There's still a ton of players here. And honestly, just speaking from my perspective, I think this is probably the most populated server since Skelth EU Classic at the very launch of it. Talking Island had a lot of people, but they also had dual boxes and all things like that. And in terms of private servers, I don't think I've ever played on a private server this populated. Maybe way back in the day, L2 Supreme, that was I think that was like C4, C3 server, but that was years ago, like 10, 12 years ago. So in terms of private servers, there's not really anything that compares to the size and health of L2 Reborn. Now moving on to the community landscape and kind of the political landscape of L2 Reborn. I originally sketched out what I was going to say for this section, but the political landscape and kind of the community has been evolving so much and so rapidly that I'm just going to say that there are maybe a dozen or so clans that are very competitive and they play at a very competitive level, and the sides that these clans are choosing to be on and how they interact with each other is changing constantly. When I first sketched out what I was going to say, there were 4 more or less sides, and then it became 3 sides, and it looked like it might have been 2 sides, but now it's possibly 3 or 4 or even 5 sides. So just know that there's many clans that are trying to compete at the highest level, meaning they're trying to get BAM, they're trying to get heroes and the dragons like Anthrus and Valakis. So when you join Reborn, obviously you're going to start very low level, and this might not concern you, it might not ever concern you, but know that down the road, if you put in the time and effort, you're investing into a server where it's not just one clan or one side is dominating all the heroes, all the bosses. It is a pretty evenly sided server, and there's multiple sides at times, and within a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, things could be very different. And the only thing that's probably going to be certain is that there's going to be dozens of clans still vying for the highest level of competition. But that's not like something that every player who plays Lineage 2 strives for. There's a lot of people that are more casual, and the good thing about L2 Reborn is there still is like almost like a tier below the top clans. I would call these like mid-tier clans that they're probably not going to BAM and Anthrus and Valakis, but they're still trying to go to certain castle sieges, like Gludio and Hein. And there's still like dozens and maybe even more than a dozen of those clans that are still active, and they still try to compete in some sense. But they're not massive clans that you need to be doing the full level of competition. So if you're coming in as a new player, know that there is a wide spectrum of clans, from very casual to kind of mid-tier clans to clans that can be very competitive. And often those very competitive clans are CP based, and that's something to keep in mind. Now, I highly recommend you get involved in the community, whether that is through joining, a casual or mid-tier clan once you start your adventure in L2 Reborn, get involved in an academy, graduate the academy, and then start, progressing down the path towards becoming high level and gearing up. I would also highly recommend you join the L2 Reborn Discord, as that's a great way to find clans and find other players to party with. Maybe join a CP or something if that is what you're into. I'm going to be putting a link for the L2 Discord in my YouTube video description, so make sure to check that out. Now, Lineage 2 Reborn isn't without some small problems, things such as bugs, as well as maybe some intentional changes from retail that do alter the gameplay experience slightly. There certainly isn't anything game-breaking, but I do think these are some things that players should be aware of as they start their journey. First off, it is L2J based, it is not L2 off. For people that know, there's some slight differences in mechanics and geodata and things like that. I will say I played L2 Reborn maybe 2 years ago briefly, and the geodata was terrible. Now it's pretty good. It's not perfect, especially in like places like ants' nests. They're gonna have some problems there, where it seems like an ant could hit you through the wall or something like that. But it's bearable. There's nothing crazy happening in that sense. I will say there are many known bugs. In fact, on the Discord that I once again highly recommend you join, they have a page there of known bugs that I think covers most of the bugs that they know about, as well as a few that aren't on there. And it's just small things, like one example is just certain port spots aren't where they're supposed to be, like Winterwood Manor. Outer Gludio is not where it's supposed to be, and if you have a Clan Hall in Aiden, it's not where it's supposed to be if you port to Giant's Cave Upper. And you'll show you here as I port. This puts you nowhere near the port spot for GC Upper. The actual port spot for GC Upper is supposed to be over here, and if I wasn't in stealth right now, I'd be getting attacked and killed. Not a game-breaking thing by any means, but the actual port spot is down this ramp over here. And things like that are just small bugs that are different than retail, nothing game-breaking. A few other things, probably a more important bug than that, that a lot of people have griped about, and I think the GM team is looking into it, is Turn Undead. So if you're an Elven Elder or a bishop and you're trying to use Turn Undead to level in places like Pagans, you can't effectively do that because the land rate is really nerfed. So that is not a valid leveling method. Also in Pagans, it's tweaked so that the monsters in individual rooms can get trained out, and that's kind of changed the meta at the highest level to make Pagans the best XP spot by quite a bit, with Moss being pretty close. But that was not like that in Retail Interlude as well. The enchant rates are designed to mimic Retail, but they are not identical. Armor has a unique enchant rate, which they go in detail on the Discord about. Mage weapons get enchanted for 40% success rate after +3, and fighter weapons get enchanted for 70% after +3. That's not to say that the GM team doesn't care about bugs or they're not focused on bugs. They certainly are. In fact, I had originally had on my list to talk about raid respawn times because they are not like retail and they were atrocious with this ridiculous window. But recently, as of like a few days ago, the Reborn GM team took a look at it and actually modified the raid respawns to be pretty close to retail for all the standard bosses, and then they looked at kind of the community and the player base and what the epic raid bosses like Bayam and Antherus and Valakis are, and they made it more user friendly for an older crowd, older demographic. Now, instead of waiting for days upon days for something to spawn, an epic raid is going to have a 4-hour window in which mass PvP could happen. I personally think that is a great change from retail, but if you're, some kind of retail diehard that's going to die on that hill, that's something you need to seriously consider if that's a deal breaker for you. For me personally, definitely not. I think it's a huge plus. And this transitions us smoothly into things I think Reborn does well, and things I think Reborn can do better. As I just mentioned, I think the Reborn team does a great job with managing bugs and small tweaks to retail to provide balance and a healthy ecosystem for the server. And I think Reborn also does an amazing job at combating bots and RMT and combating dual boxing. They are really on top of it. In fact, I don't think I've ever played on a server that's been so on top of stopping bots and RMT than anything else, whether it's private server or a retail server. And I think that makes it truly unique. But I think some things could be done better. Now that the server is 3 years old and there's no longer a X3 catch-up server, one thing I'd love to see Reborn start doing is more events for new players, whether this is double experience, from people below level 60, or maybe some kind of mission system for people below level 60. I think just because the server is healthy now doesn't mean that the GM should stop striving to be better. And I think enticing new players in and fresh blood into the server is something that should always be on the mind of the GMs. And historically speaking, events in Reborn have been very lame. They'll have an event where, maybe you could win a grand prize of a life stone, which you could farm by yourself in 30 minutes. So what's the point of doing the event? Things like that really give you a sense of, well, it's just Lineage 2. There's no fun events, whereas, both for nostalgia reasons, but also helping out low-level players, having something like a pumpkin event or some kind of other, Halloween event coming up here in October would be an excellent decision. I would also say another thing for the GM team to keep in mind and continually focus to improve on as we go into Hellbound and then later Gracia Final and then later Freya and then High Five is more ways to make small tweaks to the balance. And I'm not saying they're not going to do this, but I think as we get into Hellbound and as we get into Gracia Final, there's certain classes and certain metas that can be very imbalanced. And I think we'll have to see how that plays out. And I hope the GM team is willing to deviate slightly from retail if it means doing better for the community at large. Now it's time to answer that oh so important question of whether or not L2 Reborn is the server for you. As I've already mentioned, L2 Reborn is a low-rate server that's going to progress from Interlude to Hellbound to Gracia Final to Freya and then finally to High Five. So if you're looking specifically for an Interlude server, this probably isn't for you as it's not going to be an Interlude server forever. Also, if you're looking to simply hit level 80 super quickly and to get shiny weapons and all sorts of custom armors and weird sub-stack rule sets and team versus team events, this is not for you as L2 Reborn is looking to provide a generally retail experience. This server instead is for the player that wants to play a Lineage 2 server more or less the way they remember it from retail or from old private servers. They want to play on a populated server and they're not afraid to invest time into the server. Ultimately, if you're looking for a Lineage 2 server that doesn't have RMT and doesn't have pay-to-win mechanics, but is still very populated and very competitive and very active and healthy, then this is the server for you. If you're willing to put in the time and you're willing to invest in your character and invest in your journey, then you're going to have a good time. Find a clan, find a party, and experience what L2 Reborn has to offer. I think this is a very unique Lineage 2 experience and probably one of the best Lineage 2 experiences you can have. I highly recommend you start playing, and I think you're going to have a good time. But wait, there's more. That's right, you've made it to the end of the video now, and there's a special surprise for people that made it all the way here. If you're a new player and you're thinking about joining L2 Reborn, then I have a little prize for you. If you put me down as your referral for when you create a new account in Lineage 2 Reborn and you get to level 20 on your character, then I'm going to be sending you a €5 voucher. You'll be able to use this voucher to get permanent VIP or maybe your first class change, whatever you want. It's helping ease you into Lineage 2 Reborn and give you that little boost you need. Or buy a hat if you don't need or want permanent VIP. Either way, you're welcome to do whatever you want with the voucher. There's no strings attached. Just get to level 20 and you're set. And I hope this entices some new players that might be on the fence, and hope to find you in game. Once again, I'm going to give you instructions on how to do that, and I hope you've liked this video. I don't YouTube often, so please don't like or subscribe. I don't need that. I'm going to be putting a link to the L2 Reborn, though. Feel free to like and subscribe them. They post videos all the time, so that'll be really helpful. Thanks, guys.